actually. It's not You're not participating? No?
I'm not a student. I just watch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then if you can, yeah, because I need.
Yeah, the shoes.
Guys, these tables need a lot more. These tables in. Those tables as well.
Я думав, так і має бути.
This looks like a baba papa. Okay, we sit like this. Okay, are you participating?
Okay, everybody must be in. Do you want me to take the check?
It's up to you. So take the string. This chair is in the way. All the way, all disappeared. Okay, so this activity is called the privilege walk. Okay, I got privilege circle. I didn't know what kind of room I was going to get, so we don't have enough room, so we're going to move it on. You might have heard of this activity before. Okay, we don't need to tie it in. Okay, you can put down. It becomes sort of a drawing. Okay, so we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of, I talk about Ada Lovelace, right? The algorithms have a subjectivity. Can have, okay? But who is behind them is one of the questions we talked about. The question is technology neutral? Correct? Think about it. What does affect, emotions, mean in the context of data, algorithms? And how do algorithms see us? Okay, so this exercise is an exercise which afterwards you can look it up. Why it's called the privilege walk. It's done in the, it's inspired by intersectional theory. Do you know what intersectional theory is? Intersectional theory comes from black feminism, 1989. Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a lawyer and an activist, wrote a very extensive document about basically the main point is that all oppressions intersect with one another. So for example, if we say Brazil has a race issue, then we say it has a race issue and a gender issue together, right? Maybe people with disability, not only are they oppressed by disability, but also because they are old. So age. So it's 5 different, it's race, class, gender, disability, and I was forgetting. Religious? Huh? Religion. Yeah, it could be one of them. We could add that. Yes. So no oppression is usually by itself. So that's in classes, Marxist theory says it's class. Class is over everything else. But it depends, you know. If I'm a poor black woman from a favela in Brazil, it's class, it's race, it's gender. It's all of this together in varying degrees, right? As students, also, you know, you don't have the benefit of much experience in your field, so therefore you might be in a vulnerable position for a while until you attain. So this is basically, it's a discourse on power structures. Okay. So this is the basis of intersectional theory. It's very much used in feminism, you know, in Sweden where we work. Feminism is quite strong. There's many feminisms. But basically feminism is about equal opportunity for not just for women, but for all groups that are disadvantaged in society, that there's equity two people, pay non-discrimination. Okay, this is the foundation. I mean, we could do a whole semester on this. All right, so we're going to do a practical exercise on our vulnerabilities and all that. So I will give you the rules in a little while. But first, we need to sort of get to know each other. You guys know each other, but I don't know you. So what we're going to do is this, in pairs, very quickly, in 30 seconds, you're going to tell the person next to you what you're good at. Your name and what you're good at, okay? 20 seconds. So take, okay, I'll do with you. So, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, I can do with you. Until the end of the cycle. All right? Okay, yeah. So, I will introduce, so you introduce the other person, right? This is Natalie, and she's good at being an optimist. True? Yeah?
She's Isabel, she's good at socializing.
Okay. Who is your?
Serena, and she's very good at math and processing data and financial things, also in publishing.
And he's smart, and his strong side is analyzing from different sides information.
This is Sergey, he's good at listening off people.
Okay.
She's Maria, she's good in data analyzing.
So this is Alana, she is good at feeling people's and energy, people's mood and energy of others, yes?
This is Doria, and she's good in text and researches.
Anna Maria, she is a good editor.
Polina, she is good making friends.
This is Sasha, she is good at photography.
This is Solana, and she is good in presentations.
This is Sophia, she is good at matching colors and finding symbols.
This is Kate. She is good at singing, writing poems, and CMM marketing.
This is Taras, and he's a communicator.
Yeah, this is Vlad, and he's a video editing rock star.
And this is Ida.
Okay, you got that through some
Yeah, you have to.
And she's good in photo. Also, yeah, in the theater she is an actress also. And also she is a cinema lover. Yeah, it's photo lover. This is Roman, and he is good in storytelling. Also, he knows how to match ideas and to work with that to determine something interesting in the whole house.
And this is Yorina, and she's good at marketing and listening to others.
Excellent. Nice to meet you. See, look how many competencies you have here, skills and talents and interests. Great. Okay, so this privileged walk is a bit of a game. And first of all, so you're going to take this string. You're going to take that string. Now we're all going to stand on a straight line, beginning with that chair over there, right in the middle of the room. Okay, so maybe you want to start there, and you guys organize yourselves according to who takes design facility. I think you should get the other edge.
Yeah.
So stand very close to each other in a straight line around, in the middle of the room. because you're going to be moving back and forth. Yeah, okay, now, oh, I know, so nice close together, right? It's okay, it's going to be different soon. So put the string down on the floor, and we're going to tape it. Put it down on the floor. We need this line, and maybe the edges need to, okay, now I need some, just anybody with a higher IQ than mine.
I don't have
Okay, if you find the edge of the tape, tape yours down, then we'll stretch. Okay? While Natalia is doing that, so I'll explain the rules of the game, or the rules of the walk. Okay, I'm going to say a series of statements, and I'm going to ask you at the end of that statement to take a step forward or take a step back. Okay? Don't take a huge step back. Take a small step back. Or take a small step forward. Because we have many questions, okay? Some questions may be a bit sensitive. If you don't feel like responding, stand where you are. Alright? If you don't want to respond. You're free to respond. You're also free to not participate at any point of this game. If you do so, just sit quietly and observe the others. Okay? Alright? Yes, I'm the facilitator. There is not necessarily, it's not a question and answer like you answer verbally. You will answer only by taking a step forward or a step back. Did you find the tape? Edge?
Yes.
Can you tape it down and then can we straighten this line?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I just tape it, but not straight.
Just tape it. Yeah. Maybe Roman, you can help stretch that? And maybe
It's
the
all
tape-
this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Ah, great. So nice. The line is very important. Okay. Any questions? No? Understand? Like that?
Can we ask questions for clarification?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. But you don't have to verbally answer my
No.
question. Okay? You might have a bit of a challenge. So take baby steps. Okay?
Also,
Because of the-
one question.
Yes.
You have answered, yes, it means step below, and now step back, yeah?
It's not a yes and no.
Okay.
Okay? I will do the first question in English. Okay? So it's not a yes and no. It's if the statement applies to you, I will take you to either take a step forward, and then if it applies to you, take a step forward. In the next question, it might be the case to take a step backwards. Okay? So it varies. So you won't be always forward or backwards. No, it's either forward or nothing, or the backwards or nothing. Okay? This is very important because it could be quite it could get a little sensitive. So again, I reiterate, if you don't want to step forward or backwards depending on the question, you are free to not respond. Okay? Okay. Right. Okay, if you are right-handed, take a step forward, small step. If you're right-handed. If English is your first language, take a step forward. No,
That's foreign.
No, your first native language. Take a
Mother
step
tongue.
forward. If
Mother
you-
tongue.
Mother tongue, yeah. If it's not, stay where you are. Okay? Yeah. The no doesn't mean step backward. Okay? So it's if, then. You get the hang of it? Okay. If one or both of your parents have a university degree, take a step forward. If you rely or have relied primarily on public transportation, take a step backwards.
Громадський транспорт.
Have ever? You mean Isabel? You mean ever or now or
In your life, are you a person who normally uses public transportation? Okay. So it's one step, not two. Okay. If you have attended previously in your life schools with people you felt were like yourself, take a step forward.
I don't understand.
Can you explain?
If you went to school with people who are like you, take a step forward, one step forward.
So at least one school.
Yeah. If in your house you employ help as servants, gardeners, etc., take a step forward. If you are able to move in
Якщо прислуга є, ну, грубо кажучи, чи якщо наймаєте когось там, да, наприклад, бебіситер чи щось таке.
If you constantly feel unsafe walking alone at night, take a step back. If you are able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, take one step forward.
Так, без, without.
If you study the culture of your ancestors in elementary school, take one step forward.
Якщо
Вивчали культуру своїх предків в початковій школі.
If
тобто вчили рідну мову, там, літературу, читанку, так?
only one, you guys are taking step one. Okay. If you felt as a child that your parents were too busy to spend time with you, take one step back. If you were ever made fun of or bullied for something you could not change or was beyond your control, take a step back. If you were ever bullied in school for something that you couldn't change, take a step back. If your family has ever left your homeland or entered another country, not of your own free will, take a step back. If everyone in your family owns a personal computer, iPad, smartphone, take a step forward. I mean everyone.
And or.
And, yeah, and or, yeah. But you know, think of your grandmas and all that, right? Okay? Think about that. Would your grandmothers have computers? Own computers? They do. If you have ever been able to play a significant role in a project or activity because of a talent that you have, take a step forward. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take a step forward. If you feel respected for your academic performance, take a step forward. If you have a physically visible disability, take a step back. If you have an invisible illness or disability, take a step back. The visible. Now I'm talking about the invisible.
Серйозна якась хвороба. Не хронічний тонзиліт, а щось.
Okay. If you ever try to change your appearance or behavior to fit in more in a group, take a step back. If you have ever been profiled by someone else using stereotypes, take a step back. If you feel good about how your identities are portrayed in the media, take a step forward. If you feel good about how the media portrays people with the same identity as you, take a step forward. If you were ever accepted for something you applied to because of your association with a friend or family member, take a step forward. If you ever got something because of family connections, take a step forward.
Побула. Ну, мама, тато допомогли кудись влаштуватися.
Yeah, mama, tata.
Дядько, тітка, дідусь, бабуся.
If you have ever been interrupted because you could not articulate your thoughts quickly enough, take a step back. If someone has ever spoken to you when you did not want them to address you, take a step back. If you come from a single parent or a divorced parent household, take one step back. If you live in an area with crime and drug activity, take a step back. This is an optional question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. If you have been a victim of sexual harassment of any kind, take a step back. If you were ever uncomfortable about a joke related to your race, religion, ethnicity, gender, disability, class, or sexual orientation, but were not able to confront the situation, take a step back. Okay. If you can make mistakes and not have people blame your mistakes to your race, gender, class, or disability, take a step forward. If you've always assumed you would go to university, take a step forward. If you have more than 50 books in your household, take a step forward. More than 50 books.
Electronic books counts.
If you know where your private data is stored, if you know, you have to remember your position. If you know where your private data is stored and what companies are doing with it, take a step forward. If you have ever been harassed or threatened by someone you only met on social media, take a step back. If you have ever been harassed or threatened by someone you've met online, take a step back. If you have ever been the only person of your race, gender, class, sexual orientation in a classroom or workplace, take a step back.
Can you please once again list?
If you were ever the only one in your workplace or classroom of your race, gender, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, if you were ever the sole representative of one of these.
But not ethnicity or...
Ethnicity is suspect.
Okay.
Can you translate?
Якщо ви були на роботі чи на місці навчання єдиною людиною, представником своєї раси, народності, національності, класової, так, соціального статусу, сексуальної орієнтації і так далі, всіх характеристик.
So if you were a woman and you've worked in an all-male workplace,
Yeah.
take a step back. For example, okay? I remember, when you were the only one, or if you were younger, everybody was older. Yeah. Okay, if you have ever tried to change your speech or manners to gain credibility, take a step back. If you have had access to a play area in your city with trees and adequate equipment when you were a child, take a step forward. If you have access to drinking water in your home, please take a step forward. If you feel threatened by facial recognition technologies, please take a step back.
Again, please.
If you feel threatened by facial recognition technologies, take a step back. Nobody's afraid of it? Okay, if you are able to code, program and produce your own technology? Step forward. Nobody please.
Website is counted.
Website
is counted.
Yeah, it's counted. It's producing technology.
Website or WordPress. Maybe
Yeah, but you're still on the production end, right? Well, yeah, that's what we'll talk about. That's complicated. Hold that thought, okay? If you don't know where your data is physically located, take a step back. Well, do you? You know because Roman.
Yeah.
Well, you know because Roman did, but do you know where your data is? Ah, okay. Roman gave a hint of where it might be, but do you actually know? Okay, if you have signed privacy agreements on software without reading the terms, take a step back. Okay, now. Okay, so these are the questions that I have. Take a look at the room. We started in a straight line. What's happened? Where are you according to the first line?
On different positions.
On different positions, okay? What does that mean? Well, this is, of course, a very short exercise.
We
So-
all have different circumstances in our lives.
Excuse me?
We have all different circumstances in our lives.
Yes, exactly. How does it, who's in front? You guys, how does it feel to be in front?
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
It's
how
like
does it-
any other place in this room.
Okay. How does it feel to be in the back?
Okay.
But you guys are not in the same place.
You know, like in all this exercise, really not distance between us is matter for us, but our communication between us is matter for us.
Okay. Interesting. But okay. But
Sorry, Isabel,
Yeah.
there was a question about being spoken up, but for myself, having an ability to speak up for myself. And I think it's a little bit inadequate because it really depends on your will. So yeah, personally in my life, I have felt like I had no chance, but then I ought to overcome myself, and which made me like privileged, but it was like my choice. So I don't actually understand this aspect. So
yeah, then we can think. Then there's a few ways of thinking about privilege. It's something that you have inherited, but it's also something that you acquire, right? Because when you think privilege, it's like what you have, what you inherit, and you have that other people don't have, and it's never going to overcome. You can also acquire privilege. And the matter is, what do you do with that? This is the important part, okay? So, okay, so this is interesting, observing where we are in the room. How did it, okay.
And the question, I think they're not equal.
The questions are not equal. Ah, of course not. This
And the
is
steps are not equal.
Steps are
yeah,
equal.
of course. I mean, yeah. If we're going to talk about data visualization, like if we're going to tabulate the steps and all that, sure, there's a lot of margin for error.
For example, I can do like this or like this, and the same back.
True. But you ended up on this part of the line and not that part of the line. I think this is what's important. You know? How does it feel to the people you started next to each other? How does it, this separation here, how does that feel? Yeah, how will you bridge this gap?
Normally, it's like
Yeah?
here.
But interesting, because these are things we take into account when we design technologies for other people. It's exactly these gaps that we have to look at. Now, we cannot take for granted that what's good for me is going to be good for everybody else. So this distance, you know, but you guys have something in common, which you might not have understood before. Okay? So this is about breaking contact with the person next to you? Did everybody feel like, oh, I have to go with this person, or they went for it, I have to go with them? No? You, a little bit? Yeah. Okay, to think about. There's no answer, okay, this is no answer. So
it's quite interesting, quite curious that we have a couple, you know, that are actually on the opposite ends. Yeah.
I will have to mention this. Why are 3 women behind the line? You have to remember.
Because there are
It's
more
not
women
strange.
than men here.
Just statistics. True, it's just statistics. But can statistics account for differences? How do we read the statistics? There are more women, so more women would be likely to fall behind the line. Maybe.
Maybe it's just.
I've done this exercise before, and more women fall behind the line than men.
Why?
Okay? This is something to think about.
Is it
Okay?
bad to fall? Is it bad to fall behind the line?
No, not at all.
Sorry, Isabel. I
Yeah.
think that most of women are behind the line because of the harassment questions and
Wait,
I'm not talking
Did you
about.
see them moving on those
No,
questions?
I'm not talking about the particular girls we have here, but
Yeah.
like statistically, I think mostly women are falling behind because of these harassment questions. Because if a man is harassed, he is less likely to.
Yeah, this is very important. Listen to this. It's very
He is much less likely to, I don't know, to acknowledge this and maybe to speak up with this question. So maybe there are harassed men among us, but we will not perceive it like that. And we will just think, well, maybe it was like my problem in that particular situation. I was not able to speak up for myself.
So you would say that you in reflection, this is not, there's no certainties, no right answers, nothing. We can sit on the floor on the positions. Okay, it's easier to talk. Because I'm seeing you guys are doing all sorts of correct things. But don't you lose your line. Don't lose your line.
Okay.
Sit in your position. Because it's important that we also see obstacles, yeah? So this spatiality is very, it's a portrait, it's a snapshot, it's not exact, of course, because there's a bias, you know, some people chose not to answer some questions maybe. But we can see the tendencies, some tendencies, right? So it's interesting, so let me try to understand. So let's say that online, a guy feels harassed. He will take up that individually. Women, when you are harassed online, how do you think it's your fault?
No, it depends. It depends on the situation. If it's something about my photo, for example, or something that like is considered as my personal life event or something like this, then yes, I will take it like individually. But if it's not, then I will
you
take
maybe collectively can take care of it.
Right.
So the strength of being behind the line is that you can sense maybe oppressions more acutely, and that contributes with knowledge. When you guys are producing algorithms and technologies, you have that with you, and you show those who are more here that, wait a minute, let's think about this problem once again, because there might be people who are not contemplating. Okay, so it's an exchange, yeah. So it's like we are where we are. If I were doing this exercise, I think I would fall a bit behind the line myself as well, actually. So it's not a bad thing. There's no judgment. It's pointless. You know, it's about how do things look like, and how can we? Because this exercise is also about to think about change. How can we be agents of change when we talk about media and technology in our fields? If we were doing this with climate change, you know, with environment, we would also be thinking, you know, how can my experience contribute to more knowledge about our field? So it's not less about, it's very personal, the questions, but if we take from the personal and put it in the collective and how to turn this into knowledge, this is the sort of the idea, let's put it that way. So that was a very interesting reflection. What What other ideas? What question made you guys think the most? Somebody wants to, which was more difficult to present.
Repeat please your question. Repeat please your question.
Which of the questions, the statements that I said, made you think the most?
About social media, how it was a question about how social media you know, and we speak with you that, oh, I don't know how I can, I don't remember this.
They're like good in social media, like as my identity looks good in
Are you well represented in
Right,
media?
yeah.
Okay, what did you think? What came to your mind?
We
have no idea.
yes, we don't know how we can ask.
how we can evaluate it, because
Okay, as young women and students, when you open the newspaper here in
it
Italy,
depends
do
from
you feel yourself represented? Do you think that the media reflects your needs, your desires? Do you
In
find
general-
people in the photographs who are like you?
in general, yes, but probably we don't use all the possible potential.
You know, it depends on what you read. actually,
Yeah.
because-
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
decide what you read.
Yeah.
So in terms of newspapers, of physical media now, the big newspaper has one sender, right? They determine a little bit how things, people are represented. How many of you read actual paper newspapers?
I think none of us.
Online.
Online media.
Online. How do you reach the news? Do you go to the website of the newspaper and read the news, like read everything they have to offer?
Sometimes
The social media,
Social media, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Social media or
About pages of this media.
Yeah.
yeah.
We have, we are going after that. We click link of the media today at that site after.
Yeah, so you click on an article, the next day they give you a similar article, right? So basically what happens is that your media consumption through social media reflects who you are because you're in the bubble.
Yep.
Yeah, but we've spoken about that.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to use like RSS technologies, maybe like less generated. They're also based on our personal like priorities.
Right. And you're also so not equal.
Yeah,
So
this
how can the
bubble-
filter bubbles, how come, you know? So
But
we have to
this
think
bubble
about that.
also can be an answer why are we okay with our representations, representation in media. Because, for example, I read a few magazines and I think it's okay because people like me are reading that and people like me doing actually this media. So it's okay. I represent. They're very good. And but it's my bubble. I think it's only 1% of the.
It's our comfort zone.
Yeah, it's your comfort zone, exactly. Did anybody respond that they don't feel represented in media?
I have
Okay.
because besides media, I've also considered like marketing things, like how cisgender white men are represented there. And to be honest, I appreciate all these intersection theories and so on and so on, but I don't really like the trend where it's going, because I think you've probably known about the last Gillette case. They have created an advertisement that would encourage men to care more about women, to care more about their like behavior and so on and so on. There were a lot of people who saw representation of white cisgender men as rapists, because there are like a lot of those illusions, like because of being straight, being white, and so on and so on, the like equals being the one who discriminates others.
The super
So I don't really think that's okay. And the other part is I'm a student, and our Ukrainian media like has no clue about our students, what their preferences and so on and so on. So based on like these two factors, I've decided that I'm not satisfied with the representation.
Okay, wow. Does anybody share this perspective? Yeah? What did you?
had one example when I came to internship to the Ukrainian state media, and I was interested to to discover some students' policy issues, and then they said like it's not interesting for our media, and we're not going to post it.
Okay. So you were striving for better representation, but they didn't really see the value in that.
Yeah, so they said like a young person is not an expert, so we're not going to post it even in a blog.
Not even online like post.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So these are mechanisms. I mean, these are all power structures, right? So I mean, there's no answer, right, wrong, good, bad. It's just that let's look at things how they are. That's one thing, right? And then our experience of it, and then in between this we can find some solutions. Yeah.
To my mind, the most controversial questions were about family and about childhood, because now we have other worldview as we had that time, and someone has like optimistic thoughts about it, someone has pessimistic, and we cannot prove how it was and how it is now, and it's very different.
So memories, right?
Yes.
The memory of...
It's not easy to decide.
It's not easy to decide. Also because we as in a free society, we have the ability, especially because you're in university, as if you ever thought about going to take a step forward, because it is a massive privilege, it's like, it's also your right as a citizen to, seek education, right? You have the right access to education. But of course, we're born into something. We didn't choose to be born, right? So of course we need to contend with that. That's why childhood is so complicated.
And also we are always comparing.
You don't choose. You can choose your friends now.
We are always comparing ourselves with others and with the past. So I think even if someone of us had the problems with alcohol in the family or something like that, it doesn't mean that we think about it now as it was. Like someone is better, someone has the worst situation as I have, then my family is okay, my situation was okay, not so bad. Okay, I will take a step forward.
But these are things that affect our decisions, they affect our mental health, mental well-being, and physical well-being. And these are also factors that affect, how empowered we feel to take control of our lives, or in our specific case of writing news or producing technologies for us, right? So these are this has a because we're not just professionals, we come with our histories and all that, and because everybody has more access to technology, it's wonderful and democratic, and it takes account for all sorts of wonderful differences. And difference can be a very good thing. But at the same time, there's more confrontation, right? And there is more room for negotiation. So, things change. So we're not in a world of, standardization, or standardization can be quite, in terms of I was very impressed at facial recognition. Nobody is afraid of that.
Actually, I had a comment on that behalf. Because of our national cybersecurity works awfully. It's just not there. We have no feeling of being helicoptered and watched after by our government. And personally, by myself, I actually trust Google more than the Ukrainian government.
Okay.
So if we're speaking about facial recognition or all the data, I would prefer Google to have it and Ukrainian government not to have it.
Okay, yeah. So if you're going to be surveilled, who would you rather?
But a lot of older people are still afraid of the internet because of that, because of it remembers all your data, all your
and it does.
Yes.
Because they remember all the terrors, all the Soviet terrors, all of them data collection and usage. So they are ready to face the truth, all of us understand that if we were the ones who were being watched over by government, it would be like extremely easy for us to avoid.
So trauma, dealing with post-trauma, very important, especially for example, I mean, we're here in this Catholic university, it's a private university, some of you have scholarships, oh I forgot to ask that question. Who has a stipend, who doesn't? That's also a privilege, right? But it's important, for example, when we deal with extreme situations, for example, how do you think of education for people who live in refugee camps? Right? You have to take into account technology that takes that trauma situation. I'm not saying trauma that they're problematized, but it's circumstances that are quite hard and require care, right? The politics of care. So I think what I'm trying to get at is that we have to remember that if technology is here to serve us, if we've created it to serve us, we need to constantly try to humanize it as much as possible, and not just do as the algorithm wants me to do, because it'll get me that job. You guys need jobs, yes? I need to get jobs. Even getting a job. How is getting a job in the IT industry here? Is it equal opportunity for everybody getting out of this program, for example?
I think yes.
Yes?
Yeah,
Okay, that's a good thing. That's a positive sign.
Because of this rapidly developing niche, there is a huge demand in human resource. That means like all of even poorly educated people can learn how to code, and that would be a great opportunity because the income gap is just insane. Like
that's what I wanted to know, you know.
Yeah, so the programmers, the IT niche right now earns
Just
like
women.
10 times more than
Not
than
10,
average.
maybe 20.
Maybe even 20. So yeah, it is okay for a low grade programmer to earn $1,000 with minimum like $200. Яка мінімальна зарплата?
Програміста?
Ну, взагалі.
4150.
Це в доларах? So the minimum wage is $130.
Not the minimum,
The average is $130. And
No.
That's a bit
That's
low.
like 500.
Okay, but the rate is 20 times. That's big.
Yes.
Yeah,
Huge
yeah,
gap.
so-
Okay, we're trying. I'm trying to see the gaps, right?
Yes,
Because the
so
gaps
the
are
income wage is like 20 times, I guess. So, but anyway, it is some kind of I don't know low.
Junior.
Yeah, okay. It's easy for a person to start working in this industry. Actually, if you learn,
even if you don't have a master's degree.
yeah, even if you don't have education does not matter because there is no proper education provided by government. So no
There's
one
a
just
great
looks
demand.
Yes, you
It's
just
very similar to Brazil because the education is very, very uneven.
outdated.
If you have rich and have access to private education, you have a great education. If
Yeah.
you're poor and public education, you may be lucky.
Yeah,
Or not.
one of the biggest IT companies called Software, they actually provide their own education, and if you show to be like have high potential, they will teach you everything they need. So you will become the worker they need,
So all the jobs
and you will just earn like minimum wage of $1,000.
which makes us question the role of the university as well, right? What do we do in university?
Yeah.
Are we here because we're going to get like better salaries?
It's community.
Yeah, is it? Is that for a competitive advantage or, you know, with knowledge, you know what I mean? So, okay, there's so much, so I think that there's so much to talk about. Does anybody else, just maybe voice out, anybody else have, is there questions I should have asked? Was there questions missing?
I don't know about missing questions, but I think that the questions from our childhood are not like precise enough because it was 90s and and it was like a huge economical crisis in Ukraine basically, and so there were a lot of families, particularly in Western Ukraine, that came abroad just to cope with all this reality.
So there was a question about displacement, right? And I saw that some of you moved. So this is something, you know, so how can your understanding of privileges or marginalizations improve your existing relationships with others or with yourself? How is self-awareness? How can self-awareness be can that be transformed into knowledge? Maybe somebody else might want to respond?
Maybe when you start to know what you're doing, then you start to be self-aware. And that's coming with age and knowledge and experience.
But also awareness of what makes you you.
Yeah.
Right?
And that comes with age also.
Yeah. Awareness of that no one really cares. And that's it. You're responsible.
Nobody cares.
Yes, no one really cares if you are you or if you are not.
How can we make change then?
It's an interesting question.
Well, let me rephrase. How can you make change?
How
You don't have to ask. How can you make change? Yeah. So that we can make a difference.
And
you don't have
we
to,
can
you don't,
generate.
yeah, you don't have to respond now, but this is to think about, right? So this is also to understand. First, of course, have empathy for those who experience other marginalizations. We're all a little bit marginalized in our own way. Nobody's fully adjusted. I don't believe that. You know? And it's okay. And I think that we can use our shortcomings or our disadvantages as strength. And this is what you have. Because, of course, when you go to the job market, you'll be inexperienced, you'll be young, but you have lots of ideas. You're intellectually very, very sharp. So you have to use, you know, the fact that you don't have that much in this market, or maybe you already worked, but you have other stuff, you know. So how can you leverage and turn these disadvantages to strength? And if you were on this side of the line, what do you do with your privileges? How do you, because it's okay to have privileges. You know, we all strive to move forward in life so that we have privileges, correct? It's a good thing. But the question is not to have them. The question is, what do you do with them?
Work with them. Because if you have a talent, it's not enough.
But you know,
work with them.
Yeah. I'm afraid my children won't have these advantages, and I'm afraid about it. Just because I need to work a lot and so hard to give them a life as I had.
So you think they will take it for granted? Yeah, it happens. Each generation takes the other one for granted, but they have other challenges. Look, climate change, it's not going to be nice for them. So we also have to prepare, you know, what is the world they're going to face.
That's why I'm afraid.
Yes, exactly. So this is what I'm saying, you know, even though we are quite confident and have done well, but then how do you use that, okay? But when you get back to media and technology communications, how do you use the advantages and the strength, you know, to also minimize these gaps, okay? Because the interesting part is not where you are, it's how you work with the gaps, you know? It's like, here I am, okay, you're a lot ahead, but okay, how do you feel about me being back? How do I feel about being in front? Can we talk about it? Or can we find a common ground? Because even politically it's very important. Because the fake news and all that, it's about opening these gaps and creating anger and resentment, like you were pointing at, and just division, because there's a lot of profit to be made from that.
I think in our situation now, making a master degree is really a great opportunity to make the distance small, to minimize the distance, because we have different backgrounds. We have really different backgrounds, and someone is good at editing, someone is good at writing, someone it's very different, and we should work with our talents, with those things we are talented in, and at the same time to improve our skills in the other things, which are new for us.
Absolutely. Skills is essential, and trust me, I don't know how many jobs I got. I think the job that I have now I got because I know Photoshop. Okay, I did, I'm serious.
I did a PhD, that's like that's what you need to do to be a senior lecturer. But what actually got me the job is because I know Photoshop. Okay? So you have all this knowledge and this philosophy and sit here and talk to you guys about life and this and differences and all that. But at the end of the day, if you know how to save a JPEG, 300 dpi, you go. So yeah, skills is important, talent is important. Talent not everybody has, so you can work with. But experience, your life experience counts.
I'm
Your life
sorry
experience
for
counts.
being such an upstart. I mean, there's a lot of here.
Yeah.
To be honest, when we started the game, I was sure that I'm gonna be way
You will be in the hallway going down the stairs.
Yeah.
Waiting for us with the limousine.
And now I'm here, but actually I feel perfectly okay with that. And besides like talent and all of these things, I think it's all about personal choice and will. Again, like we've spoken, because there is a huge problem of being behind the line and feeling yourself as a victim of what's the
circumstances?
Oh, of the circumstances.
Especially in our
Thanks a lot.
society.
Yeah, and
Possibly
feeling
some-
yourself of the victim. Sorry. And what about being like privileged? What should I do? I think I would focus on a proper education and like enlightenment process by telling people that they have the free will to become father, and I think that the gap should not be like eliminated in that way. The gap should be eliminated only in the forward way.
Yes.
And that's like individual choice in a lot of issues, in a lot of situations. That is why if I find myself privileged enough like to have my own media or something like that, to have influence, I would focus exactly on that thing, because I think there's a problem when we show some people as victims. We're actually not helping them at all.
But wait. So you think that being behind the line is victim?
In some of the questions, yeah, like in harassment situations and so on and so on. So there's a problem when we perceive those people.
In stepping back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true. But so I think that life is neither perpetrated. I don't think it's that binary. I think it's in some situations we may have been victims, usually not by our own will, but by circumstances. Yeah? Which you cannot change.
Yeah, we cannot change it, but it's our
Maybe you want to say
I'm sorry, I'm just far behind the line. I didn't feel a victim, and I wasn't sexually harassed. I was bullied at school, but I didn't feel very victim about that. And I'm far behind, but I don't feel victim at all. And if somebody would say that I'm a victim, I wouldn't agree, because you choose how you feel yourself.
It's just facts and nothing more.
Yes, listen to this. Exactly. Just because somebody, I'll take the example of Brazil. Okay, most black people would fall behind the line just by default. Okay, or if you're indigenous, or even if you're a woman. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's a personal thing. It means that the circumstances are not favorable at a particular time, or things have happened. But it doesn't have to mean victimization at all. Yeah? It means, in fact, I think it's a sign of strength in that to say, no, I recognize this happened to me, and I'm aware of it, and I'm working on it, and it doesn't stop me. This is where the revolution comes, the learning revolution comes from. Exactly, this position of saying, I'm here, but I'm not necessarily going to stay there. Yeah? Or maybe it's just the way it is.
But for example, a lot of people here step back when you had like violent questions about violence, about sexual stuff, and a lot of people step back.
I know. A lot of people step back together, and I would say that a few questions, most people did. It wasn't one or two. Let's take it back to the media context. Violence is very big in media right now. You talk about fake news and all that, but the harassments that happen from dating, that's why the question about violence and on somebody you met online, it's real. What happens, the algorithms do
have an impact on our skin, on our flesh. And this is, how do we think of technologies for the future to not make people vulnerable? This is very, very important. And it's a cybersecurity, you call it whatever, but it's very important if we think about a democratic society, a sustainable society, a livable society.
Okay, something which makes me think about the landscape on social media we have right now, you know, especially during the election campaigns. Campaign when we are seeing so much communication on social media spiraling down into shitstorms, completely, right? And people throwing mud at each other, you know, for just supporting, you know, an alternative candidate, you know, or someone we don't like, you know. So it takes us so little to offend a person, and perhaps deeply, because of course sometimes it's good if you have thick skin, you know, and you don't take it like personal, or it matters nothing to you. But it's not like that for everyone.
No, but for example, I would say the case of Brazil, if you talk about this, you know, violence, or how it affects the most deeply childhood and all that, is that the political electoral campaign, what their target was to split families right in the middle. This was their target. Because normally in Brazil you would vote for whoever your father or somebody more educated in your family told you to vote. If you're a woman, oh, my husband votes on this, I vote on that as well. Now, with a young generation, a little bit because of this intersectional perspective where people are saying, well, I have a voice. I'm black, I'm marginalized, I've been beat up, raped, blah, 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 but hey, I'm a political subject, I'm a historical subject. I have a voice, I have representation, and I have a vote. So now people are voting according to their own minds and not according to their dads. So it's a break a little bit in the patriarchal structure. What happens? Families are, however, are quite tightly knit. And all families in Brazil are quite big. How are Ukrainian families? Are they big? Yeah, cousins and all that. Do you guys have WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp family groups? Okay. So what this Bolsonaro guy did was that he infiltrated. He did push campaign of voice messages, you know, as if he'd be like, he sort of behaved like a jolly uncle who comes, you know, for Christmas or whatever. Then, you know, funny guy kind of thing. And he got into the family groups, and then people start fighting within the families. So this was in 2018, the election was in October. By Christmas, some families didn't have family Christmas. The families literally split because of this polarization. And this is how you gain control of a society, right? Or one of the ways. The other way is like these church groups, you know. But so the alt-right, or this, they're very good at mobilizing, organizing people around these things, whereas they're very good at fragmenting opposition. So we are in this landscape. So this, no, we want to have a straighter line, but it's happening the opposite. So it's how, you know, this online violence, harassment, you know, has really effects in our affective sphere, in our emotions, and the people we relate to, the people we love. You know, some people decide we don't talk about politics at Christmas ever again, but they're like, you know, you create these mechanisms of distrust.
But there is also a good thing about it. We, when we go online, we are aware of the fact that we will face a conflict there, and we are less faint-hearted and more sarcastic. We became more sarcastic with the internet.
True.
So
you get really sharp, and at the same time, we feed the platforms. We're feeding the algorithms. Machine learning, we're giving them more and more and more and more to learn from. Even our humor, we were talking about this last night, Roman and I, it's like, can an algorithm be funny? Can an algorithm produce humor? You know, what is intrinsically human that an algorithm cannot do? And we were like, maybe, maybe not, but maybe they can. Tell a joke. So these are things that, you know, we begin with these very personal things, and I understand that it can be quite sensitive. I'm aware of that. So thank you so much for your generosity in being a part of this. This is really fantastic. But I think that we need to take this to another level. So when we talk about algorithms, data sets, you know, who is classifying data? right? So when you are, when the Google or the Ukrainian government or any other government profiles you according to what? According to what normal, idea of normal or idea of citizen. So we sort of need to, we don't have the, remember the diagram that Google is this big and Facebook is in UK. So how do we don't have the muscle to do that. And it requires a lot of money. Anybody who's done any social media marketing campaign knows that you have to pay for, to push, for it to be seen and get into the bubbles. So how are you going to do that without money? So we can withdraw, we can not use social media. Can you do that? 1 week experiment, no social media.
I work with social media, it's my work.
Yes, it's your work. It's everybody's work. Yeah? Can you be 1 week, just 1 week?
Yes.
Experiments.
Yeah?
1 week
Can you
without.
try that?
We did an
No, I'm talking
experiment.
no mobile phone at all, no electronics. I'm not saying don't go to Facebook, but do WhatsApp.
I did that.
You did that?
Yeah, a couple of months.
Couple of months?
Yeah, without.
So, have you did make phone calls?
No, actually the thing is that my phone got broken and I couldn't repair it because it costs so much in Sweden, so I waited until I get to Ukraine. So a smart trick
How
of...
did you communicate with your kid?
I just talked to him.
It's okay, so you did old school. You said I come back at 4 you're there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So but I felt much better. I felt much healthier and much calmer and just more myself and a better person actually.
Okay, cool. Good, so that's possible. But is that sustainable in the long run? You have to find another research object actually. Yeah. So withdrawal, that's one, right? Then there's some strategies which I talked about. Never mind me, I'm just doing this. Then we have confusing the algorithm, right? There's this one hashtag confuse Facebook, where you sort of start posting stuff that's not like you. You start being somebody else so that you confuse your own algorithm. So you manipulate your own bubble, right? For example, in Brazil, I've kept some alt-right people in my timeline, in my friends list. First, because I'm interested in what they're talking about and sharing and all that. But then I also didn't want my bubble to just be confirming one thing. To what extent that works, it doesn't work that well. But that's one other thing, how do you confuse your algorithm and all that. And then the rest, I don't know. I mean, these are the challenges, so that we can have. If you remember the end of my lecture, can we have, can we work for justice instead of just sucking into the polarization game? How much we are helping them. We are making Facebook very rich. How can we make ourselves rich? You know what I mean? It's stupid. Okay, so the little piece of paper and the pen, I'd like you to write down one emotion that you felt, the main emotion that you felt during this exercise. The main emotion. that you
Exercise, you mean when we
felt.
go
This whole
moving?
thing. Yeah, this whole thing. The main emotion. Were you angry, sad, thoughtful? Just one word, not a sentence, one word. Adjective word. I felt angry. I felt happy. I felt happy. I felt enlightened.
Do we have to say it or just think?
No, right on that little piece of paper.
Yeah, but I think I don't know where it is. No, I got it. Thanks.
that down. Okay, so so this next exercise is a little bit quicker. We're going to do it in groups. Okay, so yeah, please write in English so that I can understand. Or at least an alphabet I can understand. And then, can we begin here when everybody says?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I?
Yeah.
I was passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive. Okay, you sit on that corner.
I think so.
You were?
Just
You were?
I was thankful because many of the questions weren't connected to me.
Okay, you go to that corner.
Shame.
Shame here.
Well, I felt pride.
Huh?
Pride. I felt proud.
Confused but happy.
Confused but happy.
Yeah.
Curious. Sit here.
I was curious.
Okay, sit here. Excited there. Interesting there. There. Confused. Confused there. Shy.
Curious?
Yeah.
Curious.
Curious, okay, so curious. Interested. Interested. Inspired. Were those people? Afraid. So these are groups. So you guys have had similar range of emotions, okay? So what we're going to do now is this. I'm going to put around these images around the room in no particular order. Each of you is going to have a color, different color thread, and you are going to, and we need more tape, I need to find more tape for some reason. And you are going to, I'm going to show you. So can I get volunteers to help me pin these up?
Yep. I can.
Maybe we can do them there. Okay. So can you guys come up with one emotion that you have in common? What would that be called? You guys the same thing. Can you name that emotion? Can you name that? Can you guys name that? Maybe one up. Yeah? Oh, I'm sorry. You guys were that group. What is your emotion? Sorry, I forgot to. Neutral. Then I think you joined the more edgy group.
Angry birds.
Yeah.
Oh. So one up.
Oh, sorry.
What did you come up with? So we have one of those right in one time. And I'll try to come down here. So we can take a 3-minute break. I'm going to come down with the tape. Okay.
Satisfied. Да.
So this is how it works. We're gonna create some.
Confused.
We're all negative.
Okay.
We're all negative.
So you're gonna work now. You're gonna find this emotion in the images. It can be the whole image, the overall feeling of the image, or a particular element of the image. Okay. You don't have to find that emotion in all images, but try to find, for example, what is your emotion? Curiosity. So for example, this might be curious. This blurry person. Who is that? Then listen up, because this is the dynamic. So what you do is you're going to put so you found this dude curious, right? So you put the thread here. And then you go around the room. Wait, listen. Look. Then you go around the room and some of you thought, these guys here are pointing to the horizon. They're curious too. Okay, then you stretch the line and you put it there and you continue. Okay? So you'll find these points. Yeah, well, we'll see. And you're guys are gonna crisscross each other and it's gonna be so first go around the room and look and try to find that emotion in the image. It's not the whole image.
I think it's people first about this like let's go. You just
So maybe if you want to go together.
Іра.
Я прийшла, подождіть.
Можна всі вибрати. І мені здається, що оця все-таки більше чорна.
So try to find the exact point of the image that makes you think. Классно, я смотрела, правда, стояла, рассматривала ее. Она работает.
Не. Гутішно.
Зразу видно, хто твоє.
Ну так.
А, тут. So, somewhere
Це якісь занадто позитивні.
Або ось там, до речі, ось там теж такі. От ви ж самі
You cannot cut the line.
Реально бережно?
You cannot cut the line. Yeah, make sure you stretch out.
Більш теж більше.
No, one more thing. Take the other Actually, it's lying.
Так багато проблем з цією картинкою. Щось всі поймуть.
Ми дуже стривожені.
Що одне?
Захід сонця? А можна? Так, прошу.
Воно записує, в разі чого. Так, друзі, якщо ви не знали, камера записує. О,
Наше йде волосся. Виставай наше йде волосся.
Чекай, у нас відірвалося. Ось там скотчі трохи відвідалися.
Тарас, можеш прийняти картиночку, щоб вона не відпадала?
Тонкий скотч.
I'm curious how this works.
I'm more interested in the social.
I'm curious how does it work.
And also, I wanted the details.
How does it
See,
work?
putting on the white part of the
Don't you curious?
it has to be on the details.
Why? It's so interesting. And what is curious here? The moon? And what is about the moon?
Aren't there aliens who look like jellyfish?
Oh, the curiosity is not on the moon, but on the universe. Okay. It's black hole and other universe.
So there's no limit to how many associations you can do. And also think about details. Can you find a detail here that's there? That you can connect?
I'm curious what it is.
Just funny. Interesting guy.
Ні, чекай, ми зараз експонати.
I'm curious why this
Так, алло.
Де ця штука? Скотч наш? Ні, жовта наша. Я відомо репку. Віту.
Okay, 5 more minutes. Make sure these lines are spread.
Ну, в принципі, ми такі основні візьмемо.
I'll be right back.
Що цікаво,
Як позиційний процес.
Це була просто ілюстрація. Давай. Ну, це прямо ці, як лазерні оці, лазерна сигналізація. Ні, 11 друзів вимушено. А ми тривожилися.
Ну трошки ти його поведів. Наша тривога справилася.
Тримай його перед ставлю.
Ви тільки заходите на результати. Треба знову платити.
Так буває.
Чого ви зразу? Okay, so is this, can we sketch this? Not like this. Make it go. Okay, so. Головне, щоб відійшли nice and stretchy. Okay, now you make a loop. No, put it on the image. Put it on the image. Okay, so what do we have here?
Pretty hot.
Things are pretty out of hand. Okay, well, maybe we can sit down. Sit down.
Looks like our room.
Let's go back to that circle. Please sit down.
Як наші
Okay, so we did a where we did mounts.
Стільки цифр.
Yeah, the seems not really good. Okay. So we did an initial exercise where we identified emotions according to the previous exercise, which was to talk about privileges and
discriminations, advantages, you know, sensitive stuff. And then people had some common emotions, so they come up with one emotion for each group, and each group got then one of these. And they were asked to identify the emotions in each of the images, which were super random. So this is a debrief for, you know. So how did you work with that emotion and finding it on the image? Who wants to be the first group? Maybe yellow people?
Yeah.
You guys were emotion number.
We were emotion of satisfaction.
Okay.
Satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And we have chosen a couple of images.
Okay.
Mostly, there is one with a happy person on some kind of square and something like that.
Okay.
And also, all of the other pictures were just like boats on the river or something like that, because we found it to be calm enough, showing actual satisfaction, meaning there is no need to maybe to improve anything or something like that. So it's like calm emotion. And also we have turned our our thread around the globe. Around there,
around the globe itself.
on the foundation of the globe,
okay.
Which means that we think that like calm satisfaction should be the fundament for all of the human relations.
Okay,
So that's all.
So you found another way beyond the image, another way.
Because we're creative.
Another way to translate that. No, great. So you looked outside the bounds of the data that was given.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Also, I'd like to add that most of our pictures were full of sun, and I interpreted this like we feel warm about ourselves, and different associations we cope with that.
Okay. So it makes you feel good. You like
normal.
Yeah. Well, good. Normal is good.
Yeah, good.
Rather good than normal. Okay, interesting. So positive, right? Some kind of like calm, positive, meditative. Okay. Another group?
We had curiosity.
Okay.
And we have found.
You are which color?
This one. Yes.
No,
this one.
That's
this one.
Yes, this one.
Something about pink.
Are you sure you're not confused?
I'm confused because I remember the pictures and don't remember the color of the And we have found almost on every picture some curious moments. And we have chosen, like I said, the precise moment of the picture. And in different pictures, different members of our team have found something interesting and that involve our curiosity.
Did you disagree on something?
Sometimes, but maybe for 5
We asked the questions.
2 seconds, and it's not a problem.
We mostly asked the questions, and there were answers on the images, like the questions like why, where, who, and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you found a system to determine what was curious or not. Okay. The journalistic, how. Okay, so you guys could agree or find a basis of agreement. So, okay.
Yeah, we just, for example, one person go to the picture and say, there is curiosity here, and other ask what is curious.
What's so curious
about
this?
Yeah, and person answer and
okay, and then the person answered, and then it was satisfactory. So there was a negotiation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't like super disagree on.
We didn't disagree at all.
Okay, curious. Okay. Another group.
We were in green group.
And you were emotion?
Interested.
Interested, okay.
And it was like, well, I felt like in Facebook, you know, I like that, I don't know. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But first of all,
I don't know the strategy of other guys, but it was
Yeah,
it's interesting.
but first of all, we think that we must cooperate and we must like discuss the picture and then to select pictures that choose everyone members of our group. But then you tell us that it's not necessary.
Because you guys were like, if nobody agrees, then we don't choose. And then I said, well, if one of you agrees, then choose. Right? Which is another way of making decisions, right? I could have also said, okay, then. Maybe you would have ended up with 2 things instead of 7. No?
It's different strategies, and strategy and all.
Yeah, exactly. Or resistance against, right? Not this. Okay.
Exclusion or inclusion.
Exclusion or inclusion. Yes, yes. But you felt, all of you guys felt yourselves represented in your choices.
Yes, yes.
Even if you disagreed a little bit, at least you could make a choice that you felt okay with as a group. Okay. And the last group, what was the common emotion you guys came up with?
Anxiety.
Anxiety, great. Okay. Okay. How did you resolve that?
We choose all dark pictures.
Dark white people.
Yeah.
All dark? Did you agree on all of it?
Yeah.
Gothic emo stuff.
Gothic emo stuff. Almost like a subculture. Okay, so you guys came to the conclusion before, okay, it's the dark feeling, therefore we go for dark pictures, and then it was quite easy.
From this game, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what was the point of this? Well, okay, then what's happened? We made a sculpture. And what happens? What is this emotion? What is this emotion here? Satisfied meets anxiety.
Yeah.
Huh? Okay. How do we, anxiety, put the brain on the dude there, right, the big thing. And then there, which you guys went to the globe. So I mean, imagine this is a big database, and do these things necessarily coincide in the same database? I mean, how random is this? If we were to make a node here, this is a random association. Algorithms are full of this. Yeah? Full of it. That just lurk there. And so how we think about these connections, right? And this makes sense because there was a guiding idea behind it. But when it crosses other data sets with other emotions, it doesn't start making any sense. But databases behave like that because they're not human. So if we think of there was something very interesting here it's funny because you guys had to compromise and discuss what was interesting, what was not, and all that, but you guys agreed, right? It was easy to agree. Why was that? Anxiety.
The same wave of our moves.
Anxiety and interesting. Which one is more specific?
Anxiety.
Okay. So how does somebody decide what's interesting? Based on what? Yeah? Personal preferences, like it, don't like it? Oh, I feel like it, right? It's like looking at a painting. I like it, don't like it. Or it can be the first reading. Then what was, when you think interesting, is it more like curiosity, or like, don't like?
Well, it's like you look on this picture where dinosaur, and all my life I think that dinosaur is amazing animals that live in our planet. It was interesting and continued to be interesting for me. That's why I just look on the picture and think, oh, it's really interesting for me, and just put.
Which is more like curiosity in a sense. I'm curious about this. It excites, stimulates some other.
Yes.
Which is very different than I like, don't like. But you guys, no, I'm not making a judgment value at all. But I'm saying that when people create data sets, depending on who is creating data sets, the same picture can have totally different classifications with totally different consequences when they're applied to algorithms, for example.
So on what? If we base it on personal opinion, taste, right? Oh, I like it, it's beautiful for me. But for example, the image of the comic, if you're a refugee that crossed the Mediterranean and you don't know how to swim, you look at that image, you have anxiety. Okay? So you know what I mean? So how dependent, how are bubbles, you know, what's the thinking behind it? Is that you also sort of, which emotions do you project onto them, and which emotions do these images cause on you?
But it's like in metaphoric cards. Every card is completely different for a different person.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, but that is why I think we should try to exclude emotions from databases and base ourselves on like definitions. For example, if we take interesting, if we take a look in definition, interesting from Latin means interessence, like between something that is. So interesting, it's basically everything related to human's life.
Okay, so all images in the world are interesting by definition.
Basically, for different people with like different interests, every picture would be interesting.
Right.
That is why I think we should focus on making precise definitions, not the way how we feel about that.
Okay, so you're saying that we should always be objective and try to avoid being subjective?
We can never be objective. We can never be objective, but I think that's what we should strive for, creating data sets, because in that case artificial intelligence would actually be like a third party that would bring us alternative solutions for the same questions. If we are based on our subjectivity, we'll be on the same level of development we are now, because there are different views and there are controversies and so on and so on.
I'm not agree with you, Taras, because I think that we have to keep in mind emotions, because each of us have emotions, and we just have to be more, like, I don't know, to discover it more. And I read an article about emotional designer. So I think it's something that we have to
use?
Yeah, like to point on this thing.
Yeah. How do you account for, or let's just say, how do you, even within a rational framework, because it's coding, you need to write down a word for that class, right? It's language dependent, English, or Ukrainian. So as soon as you get, there's always contingency, circumstances, and who is doing the coding?
People.
Right? People, yeah, but people also have different worldviews based on their experiences, where they are, which country they come from, which political system they're under. Right, for example, we've had dictatorship in Brazil in the 60s and 70s. And artists had to create a new code language in order to transmit messages. Still keep making art, but there were you had to do some code messages.
Reading between the lines. That's what people in the Soviet Union did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Encoding, decoding, right? It happens during a war because somebody can't read the message. So you guys are aware of this. But there was one thing very interesting that journalists did, because journalists had a censor in the editing rooms, that when they checked, before in time when it was not digital, you had to lay out the paper, on paper, and then the censor would go and go, this, not this, not this, not that. And the reporters didn't have enough time to write a news story that would fit exactly. So they had a stack of, old medieval poems or cake recipes or something. So whenever something was censored, they put a cake recipe. And then the readers would know that that was something censored, So at the same time, so in a sense, but that's sort of like how you sort of confuse the algorithm, but you still communicate. And it's very subjective in why did the censor censor that? Because it said something about the government. Okay, yeah, government tortured people, can't be on the newspaper, and things like that. So for example, what about journalistic objectivity in those circumstances? How do you circumvent that? So you have this has to be, going back to the objective, subjective. Yes, there has to be a rational basis on which you make decisions and you agree on things, right? You have to negotiate. You guys too, right? But you cannot exclude the emotive or the affect of technology, because depending on how things work, it can really affect groups of people, can really, really threaten their lives. Okay, LGBT movements, you know, the Black Lives Matter, whatever. These are the groups that are affected when these things are not accounted for, or when marginalized groups are not producing technology. So the algorithms sort of determine for them. I'm still quite puzzled by the facial recognition things, guys. Because, for example, there's one video that I could have shown where, you know these soap in public bathrooms you put down your hand and this, yeah. Some dispensers don't recognize black skin. There's a film that goes like that. Then he takes a piece of white paper. There it is. Wow. Okay. So things like that. Okay. Things like
just
that.
a machine, yeah.
Or
It's designed.
It doesn't have a context. It doesn't have a
But it's designed.
It's
to
designed
to
technically
recognize
to
light
recognize the
monitoring.
skin.
I mean, like, you might have heard about this scandal when actually Google image search was returning images of gorillas for black people. Like, that kind of thing too.
Because, why? Because, and the other reason why I asked you to find similarities between elements, because this is how the automated, they take in parts of images and they compare parts, and that's why the gorillas come up. You know, a dark face, you know, they recognize that, but then they vanish.
I have seen very often when Facebook algorithm face recognition put the face versus a dog, for example, or just part of a picture with some legs or something like this.
Because they recognize, I mean,
some combination. Yeah.
Some combination is that, and we can actually influence those combinations. Or let's say we should be those who are creating the intelligence so that the combinations are not inhuman, are not offensive.
And all
This is the thing.
Results. Besides artificial intelligence, there are also SEO part, which like contains keywords. And actually, we cannot guarantee that there are no people out there who would upload a gorilla image and add an offensive keyword in that case. So I think we should understand that artificial intelligence and all these technologies are now on their basic level and they're only developing. And it's a great mirror of world society. So we are blaming it on technology, but basically it's all about us.
Exactly.
It tells us about our behavior.
Exactly. And our worldviews, even if they're not intentional. Yeah. So as people, we have to sort of watch for that. And how can we, you know? So think about, you know, the Syrian archive creating a massive mechanism, you know, to help justice, let's put it that way, and not create injustice. Yeah. So this is just like the takeaway of today, I guess. Anybody else have other reflections? Has this changed to your way, your perception on how we look at?
That's why we shouldn't forget about emotions in according to the technology, because it's a result. Everything is a result of our emotions, of our interests, of our behavior, and so on and so on. So we should know our roots. We should know where it all came from. That's the point.
Self-awareness, right? Or awareness, conscious. That's the you know, when you want to change something, you need to know what you're changing and what for, not just for the sake of innovation. So it's very important because you guys are going to go into the tech industry where everybody wants to be innovative and, you know, who codes the faster? Well, that was in the 90s, you know, coding and testing. No, the programmers did like, you know, contests between them. So things, you know, whatever competitiveness, but it's like, what does innovation mean? You know, in this age of you know, the internet has become a very violent place. You know, Facebook is violent. I mean, Facebook is like a British tabloid, The Sun. You open, you want to see people beat up, you know, bad politicians. It's like you open it, the worldview is not very good. You know, but we're people. you know what I mean?
People want bread and emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Bread and circus, right? So we're back to the whole
the whole human nature that we need to see somebody else bleed so that we don't go to kill other people, you know? And media feeds us this. And I'm seeing it escalating like crazy. Now you have presidents of nations like Trump and Bolsonaro, they tweet all day long. Don't you guys work?
Yeah.
Well, wait. It's not them tweeting. Okay? Bolsonaro has a 25-year-old social media manager who had a meme site, was producing memes during the campaign. A site called Bolsonaro Opressor, Bolsonaro the Oppressor 2.0. Okay, it's like, well, with, I don't know, 200,000 followers just on a little page, and it had others. So you know what I mean? And it's like, it's also a generational thing, you know? It's super tech savvy, people are knowing how to manipulate algorithms.
But besides this fact, they are just feeding the demand. Here in Ukraine, there are several like medias who are extremely informative, who are like extremely useful, and they try not to be prejudiced. They do their best, and they have no views.
Yes.
Because people just don't bother, like I don't know, figuring out about the situation.
Yeah.
They need emotions, and they need like radical think. Oh, those are bad, we are good, and so on and so on.
Yeah, but follow the money. Who has the money to push that? Maybe an independent newspaper with super good quality journalism doesn't have the money to do push campaigns on what's out there.
And this is also the way the algorithm works, because it is actually, these tech companies, like social media companies, they are actually interested in having this kind of content because it generates interaction. People start sharing confrontational, conflictual content. They start commenting on, they start shitstorms with thousands of comments on controversial content, not on some kind of good faith objective reporting or something, right? Yeah, so I personally, I don't believe in tech companies fixing the problem of fake news, for example, because they are making money on fake news, because fake news generates interaction. Like good objective reporting is not sexy enough, you know, to generate this kind of interaction.
But
So
wait
that's
a
the
moment,
problem.
it's elitist, right? Also, it's considered elitist. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't go with the people, whatever the people.
That's the bad establishment.
Exactly, the bad establishment to know, oh, they are the ones causing divisions because they are the smart ones. I mean, but I mean, it twists a lot of, it debases a lot of things, which maybe in the 60s everybody was like, the revolution was against the establishment. But now, you know, Trump is not anti-establishment. He is very much establishment. But it's the rhetoric of that. Yeah. Anyway, so these are endless. But I guess the point is, and then it's interesting that because the more anxiety was very easy to define and to find, right? Which means that there was almost no disagreement on that. Whereas you guys had to super negotiate. Now you guys also negotiated as well. So it's like, on what basis do you make decisions? And yeah, I think anybody else has another reflection?
I have a question.
Right, let's see if somebody else can elaborate the word. Anybody else who hasn't said anything? Who has thought
There is
about
a
something?
hashtag social media anxiety also. And I find it on Instagram and Facebook. It is like really interesting to read the posts of the people who have social media anxiety because they're different age, different gender, and different social layers. And it's kind of interesting research to do because it's when you are at nighttime on Instagram and you just find something like that, it's really interesting.
But you mean there's people posting about social media anxiety?
Yeah,
on
with
social
hashtag,
media?
yeah.
So it's like you're feeding your anxiety by...
Yeah.
This is an interesting mechanism. I mean, the whole psychology of it, you know, social media is therapy.
They want to see these posts about their anxiety about social media, and they just post it and they just have their thoughts about it, how anxious they are in social media when they post social media anxiety hashtag. kind of interesting stuff.
So there's also maybe a therapeutic value somewhere in a weird way.
Maybe, you know,
In a very weird way.
In a very twisted way.
Yeah.
using a bit of sarcasm, we have this therapy, but you know, it's not enough. It's like ersatz for us, like I don't know how to say it.
Substitution.
Yes.
It's a substitute for real. So I don't know if you guys read Guy Debord, The Situation is The Society of Spectacle. It's written in aphorisms from 1967 or so, no, 57. Anyway, this is it's a critique of capitalism in Paris, which was growing, becoming a very modern or establishing. Basically, what he says is that all social relations are mediated by a transaction. He's talking about money, but also mediation of you posting a photo, getting a comment. It's also a transaction of value, which is the likes and this and that, right? Which is what Facebook and Google, they don't. We give them free capital, basically. So it's like this mediation. How much? Maybe the answer for social media anxiety could be withdrawal. And talk to people instead, right? But if you come from a place where you were very threatened, where you don't have people to talk to, or the people that you're supposed to trust, are not being nice to you, then it becomes a way to be sociable. But it's very complicated, this thing. But it's something that needs research.
And attention.
And
attention of it.
And attention and action.
Because people...
And society collapsed. Finally. Panic attack.
In Sweden with my students, when they do films and reports, remember? I'd say out of 10 projects, 3 or 4 are about social media. So one of them I suggested they do a film about.
I actually noticed that there are some children on Instagram and they have social media inside. Also, they are asking stuff to get at 10 years old.
I have a 5-year-old. So far, I see absolutely no benefit of one my 5-year-old ever doing on social skills. There's absolutely no benefit. Well, he can't even read. But still, what is the benefit for a young child to be?
It's very dependent, for example, what the child will look at. For example, my child is looking on Instagram some blogs, and she's drawing, she's studying. But she is older than 10.
She's 13, yeah. But you still have, but how much do you monitor that?
Almost nothing.
Okay. But it's a process, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I see the result.
Yeah.
But I see another result, like you said about feeling herself not so thin, not enough.
But that's parenting. That's what she needs to feel in this age. It's like everybody felt that.
But I think it's a part of her age.
Yeah. Adolescence is hard enough.
But with social media on 13, it's like...
Now it's transformed in photograph.
Yeah.
She's making photograph of her friends and express her like this.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is also, how, for the internet for different age groups. Is the internet, for able adults who speak English and can search? Yeah. Like, how does that account for that? Okay, so...
Can I just say one last thing, tapping into what you just said? Yeah. There is a huge thing debated in media studies in the West right now, which is free labor on social media. So if you guys ever assume that you use social media for free, that's not true. You're actually paying for this with everything you do. So every picture, every status update you post on Facebook, every like, every share, every comment has a price. Yeah. It has a price tag on it because it brings money to Facebook because they are selling this to advertisers.
Yeah,
it's tit for tat. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but we need to be aware of this.
Yeah,
we should kind of give ourselves account of this.
And don't. It's not about pressing the panic button. It's to be
more critical. How many of you women in the room use apps for menstrual cycles? What? For menstrual cycles? Okay, is it free? Is it free app?
Yes.
Okay, do you know where your data is going to?
Somebody knows.
Pharmaceutical companies? Pharmaceutical companies? So you're
Not
using,
sure.
yeah, but that data, something happens to that data. Yeah, well, you know, it's very interesting for a lot of people.
But I haven't recognized any trends in that, or even, I don't know, so private information. What is it for?
For researchers.
For researchers.
But what?
It's possibly
every
cool,
woman
but
is
not at the
similar.
moment, because at the moment they just earn money on advertising they show. And it's not connected with the data.
Yeah.
I know the woman who has period only once in 3 months. So different women, different
But
periods.
it is a common information. You can read just medical book and listen.
Definitely, you have your body. Your body is different from some.
Yeah, it's like
My body is different from your body.
Yeah, but have you ever like saw a post about something you need connected with this menstrual periods?
Maybe, for example,
Selling you some always.
it depends. Maybe it's
Selling you advertising when you're premenstrual, where you will pro to make
maybe something.
For example,
Maybe
using
you
your
have
data to support
YouTube advertisements
pharmaceutical
for
research.
For example, in my applications there is an option to put your mood, to put some
notifications.
I think it is not about the program, it's about what you Google.
Well, that too. But don't think that the information you put in your apps is free from the network.
But as a result,
it
you'll
goes
get,
in a database somewhere.
sorry, but as a result, you'll get more personalized advertisement, which is actually better for you.
Yeah.
Because you will have
We just have
more
to
suitable
understand.
product,
Yeah, but
more
what
suitable target.
But what if I don't want advertisement at all?
Yeah.
If you don't want, you pay. Or you make it on a short. Just
But you see, we don't know. I don't know. We're all hypothesizing. We actually don't know.
That's why I'm so excited about all of this, just because I know a lot of problems and I know that I can't cope with any of them, and I know that I just need to keep calm and do something like not very extreme in social media, but you know, like cats and maybe pretty picture of my friends, but
lots of people
we
have
can stop
trackers.
here.
Trackers get lots of information from you.
They can also.
Please, I know that I don't know how they analyze all my data. So okay, just analyze. I'm sure in this life I won't do something criminal. So okay.
Well.
Well, you're lucky you're not a Chinese
I think
citizen.
the only question is just to understand that there is nothing free, and you have to firstly pay and understand what are you giving, who are you giving, and why.
But you have no idea to.
And just to evaluate if you are given some information and get some benefit, so it might be some benefit for somebody else.
Just remember, when I asked if somebody had read privacy agreements, all of you took a step back. That's it.
Basically, we're doing nothing to know about that.
So, okay.
Yes.
Dear Ізабель, thank you. It was a very interesting